right. So this session is called, and I was just asking Sonia, what is the name of this session? Any guesses what's the name of this session? The name of the session is Mumbai. So of course we're going to be talking about Mumbai and we're going to be talking about AI. But I'm really, really happy to be here, see the energy. There's so much of, there's so much of interest on core AI is what we've been sensing. From yesterday's sessions as well, we got a lot of feedback that the sessions which went into details of AI implementations and use cases, they were the big hits. So we're going to double down on that today. And I'm very happy and honored and humbled to be with some of the best AI entrepreneurs of India. I wouldn't even say these are like literally the faces of India-born AI. All of them have done a really solid work, not just from a research perspective or product perspective. All of them have built and are still building companies with tens and hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue, which comes by users who are actively using their AI platforms and products. So with that, I'll just quickly give you a brief, and I'm sure all of you, know them and would have researched about their companies already. Sharad runs Neysa, which is into, they're building the next AI cloud from Mumbai. We had a great data center visit that he kind of took us to. As a part of Mumbai Tech Week satellite events, there were a couple of, some of you might have been to the data centers as well, and it's just mind-boggling to see a data center in action and how this AI data gets processed and stored in a physical form, right in front of you, which you can touch and feel. Not the data, but the hardware there. It's very exciting. Srikanth is taking his company public very soon. Is the largest company out of the entire arena, I would say, from an AI perspective. Extremely seasoned and very hardcore, deep AI entrepreneur for, I don't know, a decade or more. I think he started building his companies probably before even I knew about AI. And Sanket is the young gun, a great friend, also now almost a neighbor. And I love the way he builds his companies because he's real, he's direct, he's to the point. And he's one of the biggest risk takers I've seen in my life. So I've learned a lot from him and his journey. So we're going to touch upon some of these elements today. And I'm going to start with, probably, Sharad, you, and then we'll go around the table, and then we'll kind of take a deeper dive. Sharad, tell us that, while you're building this AI cloud in Mumbai and in India for the world, where do you feel India AI has an opportunity, right? Because we are all building, and we are all focused on these large language models, and West has already built a lot of large language models, and they've been building it for several years now, more than a decade now. So they have invested billions of dollars, invested a lot of time. What is India's opportunity here, and what should an early professional or a student should do to kind of become a part of this story?
Thank you, Dhruvil. It's a pleasure to meet all of you. So, as many people have said, I think first I heard this when Jensen came for the October summit, and then many people before me have also spoken. And it's a great opportunity for us. I think the Tata chairman also spoke about it yesterday. A great opportunity to us not just to be merely consumers, but also to be builders. Right? You've seen the example of Sanket, right? He's built from India an app that InVideo, which is used by clients across the world, right? It's the fastest growing, one of the fastest growing AI apps in the world. So this is an opportunity. We are traditionally used to be doing back office stuff, right? BPO, outsourcing and stuff. Now we can actually build products that can be used by people, not only by businesses, but also by end users across the world. Our job at Neysa is actually to enable the infrastructure to allow people to do that. Right? You heard, I won't go too much into Neysa because you just heard Karan speak before me. And so that's what we are trying to do. But there's a huge opportunity, right? While Kunal in the previous talk also mentioned about some of the challenges, like, that cost labor arbitrage is gone because now you can build, even the West can build applications cheap. But I think the real opportunity is if we can leverage what we have, which is our intelligence and our software capabilities, we can build applications across the world just like Sanket and others have done.
Any couple of inputs for an engineer on should they be learning AI tools? Is it what you recommend to be able to build applications faster? So this is more for organizations.
Yeah.
What does a tech professional do?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, most, I think we have to upgrade our curriculum. I think most colleges now are providing GPU infrastructure for people to build AI apps. I think we as GPU providers or GPU cloud providers, one of our largest segment is the research institutes, because we are working with the IITs, the Indian Institute of Science, and companies like that. Organizations like that, to provide GPU infrastructure. And so most students, in my opinion, should be reskilling, because if you don't, you'll be left behind. So they should absolutely embrace AI, not be afraid. It's, as people in the previous talk also mentioned, it's much easier to do it. It's much faster to do it. Somebody mentioned that what used to take 6 months was done in like 2 weeks or something. And so absolutely, don't be afraid of it. Embrace it. And if you do, you will reap the benefit.
Great, thank you. Srikanth, you've been doing AI before AI was known to masses. And you have several companies within your umbrella as a Fractal. If you can take an example or one or two such products or companies that you've built over the years or recently, how did they get conceptualized, and how did you know, or how did you have that vision about AI before even the world really knew about it? So how do you think about it?
Yeah, so I was graduating back in the 90s from my engineering, and I used to build some neural networks with simple one hidden layer, things like that for signature verification, fingerprint verification, things like that. And back in those days, the prevailing wisdom was that neural networks are dead. And there was a big divide between the computer science people and the electrical engineering people. The computer science people felt that AI was all about rules-based AI, basically expert systems. Back in the day, they were called expert systems. And then the electrical engineering people were the ones who were saying neural networks might work. And these computer science people had a lot of disdain for any neural network. It was like astrology, like the kind of disdain you may have for astrology, they had that for neural networks. So 10 years after that, when AI really took off and deep learning and neural networks became a big thing. Fractal was started a few years after I graduated. That was in 2000. So we are 25 years old as of this month. And we were founded to power every human decision in the enterprise. The idea was to think of all the decisions that consumers, enterprises make, and how can you bring algorithms and AI to drive that decisions and make them better. So Fractal started with this in mind. We started building, neural network models. Nobody wanted to use them, so we started using logistic regression, which, does a really good job. It gets you pretty much along the way. Unless you have millions of rows and unstructured data, usually logistic regression does a pretty good job. So we built a lot of logistic regressions model to predict consumer behavior, enterprise consumer behavior, and we built an amazing business over the years. Fractal is about 3,000 crores in revenue today, 2,750 crores from Fractal, and around 300 crores from Cure.ai, which is a Fractal spin-off, which we don't count in our revenues. So that's the Fractal scale today. But over the years, we built a bunch of AI companies. One of them I'd like to talk about is Cure.ai. So 2011, I think Prashant Warrior, who's CEO of Cure.ai, I think he was in Arizona, I was in the Bay Area, and he was interested in moving back to India. So we had an interview discussion. And like they say, love at first sight, it was hire at first sight for him. Like I said, Prashant, you have to join us. So he joined Fractal, quit Fractal after a year. He started his own company and joined back Fractal. And the idea was he became a chief data scientist in 2015. And then he and I had a chat that, look, what can we do today in AI that will change the world? And after a lot of soul searching, we said healthcare is the one which has the highest AI impact. So why don't we think of healthcare? We started with genomics and radiology as the two areas, and eventually boiled down to radiology. And we said, look, let's go and work backwards from decisions. Like think about tuberculosis. India is a tuberculosis capital of the world. So we said, look at tuberculosis as a problem, and can we see with a chest X-ray, can we diagnose tuberculosis? Because frankly, there are not enough radiologists in the world. So many of the successful AI applications are thought from the consumer or the user backwards rather than data forwards, which is how tech people usually think. So we created Cure.ai, and now Cure has touched 25 million lives around the world. So 25 million people have been scanned using Cure X-rays, and today it's identifying things like lung cancer. So if you lung cancer, the situation is such that if you detect early, you have 70 to 80% survival rate. But if you detect late, so survival rate drops to 7-8%. So it's a 10x difference in survival rate. So what we are doing today is working with AstraZeneca and scanning populations around the world and finding lung cancer and putting them on drug therapy, therefore saving countless lives in the process. So I've seen AI companies really make a big difference to the world, and most of them are working backwards from decisions. I can go on, but you want one example, so I'll
I have a quick follow-up on that. You use some of the technical words like the neural network, regression, unstructured data, and all of us engineers, we study these concepts. and I've seen there are two kinds of people, right? Like some who get a lot of who get too much bought into this research as research topics. They love them as technology, and they want to somehow implement that into whatever application they find, right? And the other way of thinking is, which is what I've seen most entrepreneurs doing, is that they would first pick a business problem and then see what out of the portfolio of technologies available, which is the best fit. Were you any suggestions on how can one transform their thinking? Because again, as engineers, the sheer first love is always towards, if I understood neural networks well, I'll somehow try to find an application on it. Like, how do you stay away from this?
See, what I have seen is, to build amazing companies, AI companies, you have to meditate on the problem, not on the solution. Understand some pain points, understand the user, really meditate on that. Develop the problem rather than developing the solution. And once you have developed the problem, understood the users, then the AI is a means to that end, which is to solve that problem, and you can absolutely do that. But most often, I've seen people thinking, okay, this is a cool technology, where can I use it? That is I think it's backwards. I think that's where I see a lot of mistakes. And you asked a question of Sharad, which I wanted to answer. For all the engineers out there, my push to you is learn math. Engineering is not just about writing code, but you have to, especially in the world of AI, if you understand the underlying math, linear algebra or probability and statistics, and even get into things like lower level of coding, like I'm sure Sanket does a lot of work on CUDA, right? Just at the hardware or close to hardware level. So as much as you can get down into the details, understand the math and understand the code at the lowest level, your relevance will go up a lot more. Because right now, most coders can use English to write code, right? So for bulk of the majority, it will be like use English prompt and get results. But for engineers, you have to go all the way other way. Get into understanding of math, get into understanding of the writing code at the as close to the hardware level as possible.
Extremely valuable insight. Sanket, coming to you now. So Sanket is you are known for taking bold bets, right? And I've seen your journey over the last 6-7 years in terms of sometimes you just kind of disconnect and go back to foundational thinking, first principles thinking. And I think it can be very scary movement for companies and entrepreneurs when you have to kind of, while you're doing good, but you are not skyrocketing. And you still take a decision to say, I'm only here to skyrocket, right? I think you took this decision right, at the right time, because you've been spending a lot of time before, again, this AI boom came, the generative AI, boom came, and you had the product ready because you spent that time at that time. This is again 2020, 2021 kind of a time frame, right? Tell us more about that journey. How are you you personally able to take those bolder bets, and how do you push your team members, and how have you institutionalized that thinking in your team to be able to take those bold bets with you, support it, think out of the box?
Yeah. So it's as simple as, really, I believe very truly that I want to change how video creation happens today. I just don't like it. I think it's stupid. This is not how world should be. And when everything that's happening around the world, when it gives me an opportunity to truly change it. And I think like InVideo, I want InVideo to be like magical, and like we want people to be surprised happily about like what it could do and how it could do it every single time. And I think that is really what we are constantly chasing. And in that chase, what I've realized the hard way is that you need to like really pull the solution much further than what you can. And like one way to do that is like, what does a very, very ideal look like? And like try to shoot for that, and you will never hit the ideal, but you will settle for something that's still far superior than everything that could be done in just that zone. So you would do that, and the thing is that while you're doing it, you are forming some opinions, and when you're forming those opinions, they're not light opinions. Like you spend 2-3 weeks thinking about, will it work or not? And then you take a bold bet. Now, the thing with all bold bets is that when you enter a room, most likely all your colleagues will laugh and say, this won't work. And there are 100 reasons why it actually won't work. But the thing is, it takes a little bit of imagination to say that you can't do a lot of things when you do this, but you can also do a lot of things. And do more people care about like those things that you enable in the world? And you just take those bets while realizing that for every 5 bets you take, you will be more wrong than right. So you take 5 bets with like opinion, rigor, thinking, you will still be wrong like 3 or 4 times. You accept it and you say that the one time I'm right, it will all pay for itself. And it does pay for itself. So that is like just it's actually very calculated, and it's not like, hey, I'm bold. I'm like, yeah, sure, I'm going to fail, but the day I succeed, it's going to be so big that it's not going to matter, but I'm not going to succeed if I don't take like very, very opinionated bets. Because otherwise you'll always feel a lot of competition, and you always want to like try and counter position where the competition can't really come, because you are attacking it from like a different angle, a different point, and that like just is differentiated. And I think differentiation is what survives in any form of a business. So, and that is how I take it. And the other thing is really like, if I'm on a pitch, if I'm middling, I know I'm an okay batsman, but if I'm middling on that day, I don't want to score 80 runs, I want to score 200 runs. I'm okay to get out on 30, but I'm not okay to get out on 80, then I want to go for a 200. So I'll just do it.
Great point, great point. On the way here, Sanket, you also gave me an example of some of such one decision. And sometimes these bets, as an outsider, feels like must be some mega life-changing bets, but it's actually a lot of smaller bets you might have taken at a point in time. And you took an example of one of the capabilities in your platform, which was very unconventional thinking that you reflected. Can you share that?
Yeah, I mean, look, in our case, non-linear editing got invented at some point of the world. In the world, right? Like, people started editing on computers at some point in the world. Something got invented, and I think everything in the world is today without or with bells and whistles of what was invented. We said that, hey, like, this is how it happens. What happens with like AI coming in? What happens if we delete the most important part of it? And we deleted the most important part of it, and what we believe is like the TAM expands when you delete something large. And I often think about rooms that, hey, computers had Ethernet port, and I'm sure people argued that you can't remove the Ethernet port, internet won't work, like this won't happen, and hey, now we live life with like internets everywhere without the port and like without all of that. So like we just deleted it, and when you delete something large, actually you make it far more accessible. And there's just some nuance to it, and you want to be very careful about it, but that's really how it pans out. And one example that we all can probably agree to is that when 2-hour delivery moved to 10-minute delivery, of course everyone laughed on it, but guess what, everyone wants it. And the TAM of that like exploded. Like there was no way to spreadsheet out the TAM. When you stretch the delta so much, you can't spreadsheet it out. You can't like model it out. And you want to constantly just aim at that where enough people think this won't work, but you have some deeper knowledge on an atomic level where you believe that it might be possible. And then you have to like work on the journey, and the only way to find out if it's possible or not is to actually walk on it. Like you don't get clarity firsthand.
Extremely. I think that's a solid example. Again, I think this whole 2-hour to 10-minute delivery that you said is such a relatable example for people. And it kind of puts the whole taking bets and stretching the, kind of reinventing the TAM altogether starts to make sense. In similar lines, Sharad, and I know I have about 7 minutes here, so I'm going to pick one quick one. On the similar lines, most people are working on software and applications and models, which is still soft aspect, right? You've been a hardware person all your life, and hardware is hard. I remember we had, at LogiNext, we had tried to do hardware in 2015. In 6 months, it was a disaster, and we said that's just not our expertise. India also generally is not known for hardware skill set. In fact, one of the best hardware engineers and talent of India actually sitting somewhere in the valley, right? And then working for the best of the hardware providers that we have today. What do you think, what's your recommendation? How did you think about it? How did you crack this hardware game?
So I'll tell you, my background, I started with data centers in India, so we were the first to build data centers. And data centers, of course, require hardware, not only in terms of IT hardware, but also in mechanical and electrical hardware. And when that succeeded as becoming India's largest data center company, the natural next step was to equip these data centers with AI infrastructure, because right now the maximum boom that we are seeing from all the hyperscalers in the data center industry is for deploying GPU workloads, right? And that poses a lot of challenges. By the way, since we are on Mumbai, 40% of India's data centers are in Mumbai, right? So we are the data center capital of India. And given that we were seeing this explosion, it was natural that this is something that we felt was a great opportunity to build from India, first for India and then for the world, right? And so obviously, access to talent is a challenge because not many people have the expertise to scale this infrastructure, right? Today we are deploying thousands of GPUs from companies like NVIDIA and AMD, but the talent required to scale infrastructure, I think we've got probably a bigger pool of software talent, not as much of a pool of hardcore infrastructure talent. So we are actually training people. We take good sysadmins who understand how to, who are good on Linux and networking and security, etc. And then we train them up to kind of get them up to speed with AI, scaling AI workloads. Right, so that's what we are doing.
And hardware is also often looked at a bit of a capex heavy business, right? So as an early tech professional or as an early founder, I would always be wary of kind of walking a hardware path, assuming it's going to have a lot of capex and operational realities and all of that.
There are two challenges. One is the capex, and second, the rate of obsolescence. So NVIDIA, for example, has already announced first H100, then H200, then they've announced Blackwell 200, Blackwell 300. They're talking about GB200, and they've already lined up a whole series of models. So one is you have to invest. We've already invested close to $50 million in hardware, and then that hardware has a very short life. So it's not non-trivial business, and it's obviously not for everyone because you have to have that appetite. But given that we had done a capex-heavy data center business earlier, right, and we had built when we were competing with the giants like Reliance and Airtel and Tata's, right, and we were a startup. But one of the advantages in being a startup and why we took that bet is because we are more agile and nimble, and we could move things faster. So despite such multi-billion-dollar companies we were competing with like venture capital-backed company, we grew to become India's largest data center, and we hope to replicate the same on AI infrastructure. But here our competition is not only with the Indian giants, but also with the global hyperscalers like the Amazon, Google, and Azure.
Srikanth, do you guys invest a lot in your own hardware, or you procure a lot of hardware? In today's world, I mean, all these H100, 200, all these great words and great newer series that keep coming up, and sometimes it's difficult to keep up with, right? Are these essential part of building an AI company at scale?
Yeah, absolutely. So data, compute, and techniques, right? That's really how you get accuracy in any AI model is a function of the quality and quantity of data, the amount of compute you can bring to the task, and your improvements that you're making to the way you're solving the problem in terms of techniques. So compute is an important part of that. So we do have, for example, we do work with data center providers and AI providers. We work at the hyperscalers. And I think as Fractal, we are, I think, the 10th largest in ISV in the world for, let's say, somebody like a Microsoft, in the top 10 in the, across the globe. So we do end up using a lot of compute to power decisions inside companies, including a lot of the GPU loads. And some of the research that Fractal is doing is all done in our own data centers. We have our own center where we have a bunch of GPUs, but we also use providers, like we work with Sharad, we work with Sunil of Yota, and so on. So we do work with a bunch of players. One thing I would say is that some of the assumption on the efficiency have recently been challenged with DeepSeek, et cetera, that maybe you can be more efficient in terms of the compute than you earlier thought. So that's definitely one assumption that one has to revisit.
Understood. Sanket, again, just extending that question to you now on the same topic, how does one think about economics, right? Because ultimately, as a business, you're investing into hardware, there's always a talent cost, and it feels like that, hey, all this fancy stuff is basically a game only for large players like Fractal who already have a proven track record, or funded players like you who have raised money from some of the best investors in the world. How does somebody who doesn't have access to capital think about it? And should they be even thinking about it? Is it a capital associated problem?
I mean, of course, GPUs are capital associated problems, but I think if you're a student specifically and if you can hustle hard, you will figure out way to get some hardware. Like someone's going to throw some GPUs at you and then you will do it. But I think doing it without GPUs is really, really difficult. So there will have to be compute takes budget. Also, your models need a lot of iteration, and the only way to find out is after the model runs and what you get back. So that takes cycles, and with all the progress that's happening, that's going to be faster, but it's still going to be expensive. It's coming down, but it's still not going to be very, very cheap. So it's a bit of a double whammy, and you will have to figure out how to get GPUs.
Just to add, I think most providers are providing credits. Not only the AI mission or the government is subsidizing researchers and startups, but also a lot of the providers, not only the hyperscalers, but even companies like us are providing credits to startups to do this. Yeah.
Yes.
Srikanth, are you guys, Sanket used this word that Fractal also works like an incubator in a way, right? I know it's not pure play incubator, but do you also offer support to early entrepreneurs? Would that be something you would like to share with the audience today?
So over the years, we have incubated a bunch of AI products. Like, for example, we have a text-to-image model called Kaleido. It's free for everyone to use. Vedya.ai, which is a free healthcare question-answer service, and you can upload your medical reports and get answers. And we have MarshallGoldsmith.ai, which is an AI coach. So a bunch of these very new generation AI firms, we incubate a bunch of entrepreneurs as well, which are a lot of them are homegrown entrepreneurs. So we have a company called Asper.ai, which is doing an amazing job in enterprise AI and revenue growth management. And I'm totally open to mentoring entrepreneurs who are building AI startups, because I feel like one of the ways in which I can multiply my impact is by working with amazing entrepreneurs. I see this generation of entrepreneurs are the boldest and the most aspiration. I mean, they're absolutely inspirational to me, because I see the amount of the kinds of problems they want to solve and the extent to which they would take risks. Like Sanket is a great example of that. So I'm very amazed by those entrepreneurs. I'm happy to mentor them, but also see in which entrepreneurs we can invest as Fractal, or in other ways support these entrepreneurs in growing. And happy to connect with any of you and help you build your AI company.
Awesome, great. I just realized that we are about 5 minutes over time, and I had actually kept a plan to let audience ask 1 or 2 questions. I don't know can we do that? Or are we even doing audience questions? Are we okay to? No? Okay, sorry, we don't have a time. But all of them are super active on social media, I know, and they have been very helpful to young entrepreneurs, tech professionals, and of course they are all hiring as well, right? And they're incubating as well. So if you would love to stay in touch with them, please hit them up on any of their social media profiles. And thank you so much for being a patient audience. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dhruvil.